since I was a teenager and I first got into Jane Austen, Emma has always held a really special place in my heart. I mean, I loved it so much that I literally took grad pictures with that book when I graduated high school. And honestly, Mr. Knightley, definitely my favorite of Jane Austen's romantic interests. Sorry, all my Darcy fans out there. So I have been trying to make a Emma nostalgia bait video for a while where I compared a bunch of different Emma adaptations, but because there are so many, I just never got around to it. It was just such a busy, big thing that I would have to do, and it just never happened. But in looking for these adaptations, what I found was there were 2 different Emma adaptations that were released within a few months of each other. I am of course talking about the year 1996 when 2 different Emma adaptations released. The first, probably the most well-known one, was a theatrical release starring Gwyneth Paltrow as the titular character of Emma Woodhouse. And the second was a direct-to-TV movie starring Kate Beckinsale in the titular role, released in collaboration with ITV. Now, I really wanted to compare these movies because if I was alive in 1996 and I saw that there were 2 Emma adaptations, I would definitely go see both of them and then try and decide which one I like better. Now, I know that some people are going to go into this with some preconceived notions about which one is going to be better. I certainly did, because I think Gwyneth Paltrow has a bit of a reputation of not being the best actress. But I want you guys to hear me out on this, because I actually had a lot of fun watching the Gwyneth Paltrow version. And was it perfect? No. Did it have mistakes? Yeah. But I had a lot of fun. So let's go into this with an open mind and let's discuss the 2 1996 versions of Emma and determine which one is better. I'm going to do this by breaking it down by analyzing the portrayals of different characters, a couple of relationships, and just some of the overall themes and rewatchability of the movies. So let's break it down and see which one is definitively better. First, let's talk about the most important character, Emma herself. So obviously in the Paltrow version, she is not British. And I think she's like one of the only members of the cast that is not. And the accent is terrible, and it is distracting, and it is the first thing I noticed when I started watching this movie. It is really, really bad, but that's not the only reason I wasn't a huge fan of this Emma. I didn't really like how manipulative she felt. Obviously, Emma is a character who is very concerned with wanting things to go her way, being in control, being a bit of a matchmaker. But there were some times when Emma was talking to Harriet and was really manipulating the way that she felt about certain people, and it felt really underhanded and not very direct. And the little smile that she had felt really like evil scheming. And I wasn't a huge fan of that. However, I did like how dramatic and messy she was. I thought it was really, really funny when she just starts having a breakdown in the orchard with Mrs. Weston when she realizes that Harriet is in love with Mr. Knightley and she's also in love with Mr. Knightley. I love the drama of her taking down Harriet's portrait and replacing it with a portrait of a dog. She's messy and dramatic and emotional, and I love her. I love her because I think it shows how emotionally immature Emma really is, which is her biggest flaw. They also kind of use this technique of narration to show Emma's internal monologue and how she feels about the people around her, that kind of judgmentalness that she doesn't quite show as much. Trying to keep up appearances a bit more, but is being a lot more judgmental in her head. Kate Beckinsale's Emma is, I'd say if Paltrow's Emma is manipulative, Beckinsale's is blunt to the point of sometimes being mean. She's definitely not hiding her emotions or trying to get someone to think it was their idea. She is blatantly stating her opinions on things to the point where it is quite cruel at the earlier points in the movie. I mean, she literally tells her friend that she would stop talking to her and not be friends with her anymore if she married a farmer because she would not write to a farmer's wife. That's insane. That is a crazy thing to say and so mean. But I think that sets up the growth that this Emma has throughout the film. I was really worried when I started watching this because I was thinking, am I really gonna like Paltrow's Emma better despite all the flaws with that character and the terrible accent? But then as the film went on, I felt myself really liking Emma because they were showing her change. She starts off being very blunt and a little bit mean girly, especially toward Jane Fairfax. But as it goes on, and once she hits that point in the story where she starts to consider her actions more after insulting Miss Bates, we really get to see some growth in her. And by the end of the film, I really, really liked who she was. So I really love that growth. She's also a lot more reserved than Paltrow's Emma. Paltrow's Emma is very excitable and overdramatic, and I did like that. I found that really funny, but I also like how reserved this Emma is. She is obviously very obsessed with social image and class, so it makes sense that she would be keeping her more dramatic moments to herself. And that is to say, she does have dramatic moments. This movie makes use of sort of fantasies, as Emma has dreams and daydreams about getting her friends married and meeting Frank Churchill. And it's just all these like crazy little dramatic daydreams that are interspersed, which I think really show the silliness and emotional immaturity of Emma, but also show that that's something that she keeps very close to her chest. That is something that she hides. And the judgmentalness that we see in the narration of the other Emma is something that we see out loud. She's talking to her friends, not to people's faces, but at least to Harriet. She's making little disparaging comments about Jane Fairfax and Mrs. Bates. So all that to say, I think the winner for the best Emma is Kate Beckinsale. Now we're going to get into Mr. Knightley, my favorite Jane Austen romantic hero. In the Paltrow version, he's played by Jeremy Northam, and I really, really like this Mr. Knightley. He is really sassy and expressive. His facial expressions, even when he doesn't have lines but is just reacting to things, are hilarious, and I love it. He's very kind and respectful to the women, especially the women that Emma tends to push to the side. And even though he argues with Emma, I think his affection for her becomes really clear. And I think that's really important for a friends to lovers story like this. You have to be able to read into these relationships to see that there is some sort of foundation there. And I really, really see that in this relationship, because even though he picks on her, he still clearly cares for her. And when he's upset with her, it seems more out of disappointment than it does anger. Speaking of angry, in the Kate Beckinsale's Emma, Mr. Knightley is played by Mark Strong, and this guy is angry literally all the time. He is angry and shouts at Emma, and he yells about Frank going to London to get a haircut. And I understand the idea is that it's like, oh, this is so frivolous, but they cut to him just literally yelling at nobody, and no one else is that upset. And it's like, there are far more annoying things that this specific Frank Churchill does, which we'll get to, that I think are worth his anger more than him going to London to get a haircut. I just found it really, really unpleasant. I also did not find them to have a very good banter, but this guy really felt more like he was trying to be Mr. Darcy than Mr. Knightley. And I wasn't a huge fan of that, because if I wanted to watch a Mr. Darcy character, I'd go watch Pride and Prejudice, not Emma. All that to say, though, he is still respectful to women like Harriet and Miss Bates and Fairfax, and he definitely is guarding their honor from the men in this and like kind of talking back to the men who disrespect them. But again, I just can't get over how angry he is, and there's really no basis for his relationship with Emma. So I'm gonna have to say that this one goes to the Paltrow movie. Okay, next we talk about Harriet. Harriet is played by Toni Collette in the Gwyneth Paltrow version. Her accent's much better. Also not British, but she's Australian, so maybe, you know, that's a bit closer probably. I like her. I think she's really fun. She's very innocent and cheerful, but unsure of herself. She has some really cute lines when she's talking about Mr. Martin, where she refers to him as Mr. Martin, my friend, and she just seems really unsure of herself while talking about it with Emma. And like Emma in this movie, she's also kind of a disaster, and I love her. Like, both of these girls are so dramatic, and it's like, I see why you two are friends. And I also like that we get to see her being upset about Emma getting engaged to Knightley. She's just confided in her friend that she has feelings for Mr. Knightley, and then shortly after that, her friend gets engaged. And we get to see Harriet be genuinely upset and start crying and leave and not talk to Emma for a while until she gets engaged to Mr. Martin and is able to move on and move past that feeling. I like that we get to see that emotional side of her and really get to see how that moment impacted her, because she is such a emotionally driven character. In the Beckinsale version, Harriet is played by Samantha Morton, and I don't really have much to say about her because we didn't really get to see much of her. Her relationship with Mr. Martin feels really empty because we see so little of them interacting, and her friendship with Emma does not feel significant either. She's kind of just there, and Emma is the one who's really controlling the narrative, and Harriet is just sort of like a side character. So I kind of have to give this one to the Paltrow version again, simply because I feel like they did so much more with Harriet and let her have her own story. Okay, next we've got Mr. Elton. In the Paltrow version, he is played by Alan Cumming. He's very fun to watch. He's very funny and awkward. One of my notes I literally just wrote, "It's giving I'm just Ken." And I think that is the best way to describe how he interacts with Emma throughout this entire film. However, it didn't feel like Mr. Elton. It felt like Mr. Collins. And I would have loved to see Alan Cumming play Mr. Collins at some point in his younger years. So it was a similar situation to the Knightley in the Kate Beckinsale version, where that felt like Mr. Darcy. This one felt like Mr. Collins to me more than it felt like Mr. Elton, and I wasn't a huge fan, despite how much I enjoyed watching him. In the Beckinsale version, he is played by Dominic Rowan, and I like this guy. He is way more, well, I don't like him, I actually hate him, but the fact that he makes me hate him tells me he's a good actor. He's way more focused on class. He seems way more calculating, especially when Emma turns him down, and his reaction is to get angry at her and start like scoffing at her explanation. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hate this guy. But I think that's a really great use of that character of Mr. Elton. I think it's a really good portrayal of that character. I like what they did with him. I like that they made him so much more like incel-y. And yeah, so I have to give this to the Beckinsale version. Now let's talk about Miss Bates. We're going to go through this one pretty quickly. In the Paltrow version, she's played by Sophie Thompson, and she's quite similar to Harriet in this version. She's very awkward, very nervous, and socially unsure. She's very quiet, and she talks really fast, and she's really awkward. I like her a lot. And I also like that we get to see the emotional impact of Emma's cruel joke at the picnic, because she starts avoiding her. That's one of the things I do like about the Paltrow version, is they actually show how Emma's actions are impacting her friends and how they don't just forgive her right off the bat. But it didn't really feel super unique to me. So this is where the Beckinsale version actually comes on top for me, because in the Beckinsale version, she's played by a woman by the name of Prunella Scales, which is a great name, by the way. And she's a lot more extroverted and loud. This version feels like she's talking more and is excitable and talking a lot because she has a lot to say, and she just doesn't really think about the fact that like you should let other people talk. And she feels a lot more individual. She doesn't just feel like another version of Harriet or like what Harriet could become. She feels like a real different person. So I am going to give this to the Beckinsale version. Let's talk about Frank Churchill, the heartthrob, the worst guy on the planet. So first thing we should talk about with Frank is that, to me, the crux of Frank Churchill is that he is leading on Emma, but also is engaged to Jane Fairfax. And he's kind of like this like lover boy, handsome character. And to me, he should still be likable. You know, like he's trying to hide his relationship because his mother or like his aunt doesn't approve. But he is still, to me, should be seen as someone who is nice, because we like Jane Fairfax. We don't want her to end up with someone who sucks. In the Paltrow version, he is played by a young Ewan McGregor, and he is flirty, but not to a point where it feels intense. You know, you could interpret his actions as just being friendly. And I think that opens up that unsureness of his intentions. And Emma herself doesn't really know how she feels about him. She thinks she likes him, but she's not quite sure. She's like, I thought love would feel differently. And so you can tell, like, she might just be misinterpreting his feelings for her. There's also really clear clues on how he likes Jane, the way he acts around her, the way he like kind of looks at her. There's really clear indication that he is with her. And so even though he might be flirting a bit with Emma, we can still see that there is a little bit of loyalty there to Jane Fairfax. However, the problem with that is that I don't think he's that bad. So Mr. Knightley's objections to him and him claiming that he's a bad influence on Emma doesn't really make sense, because he hasn't really done much that is worth being upset about. Now, one where he has done something to be upset about is in the Beckinsale version. He is played by Raymond Coulthard, who, fun fact, played young Scrooge in the Muppet Christmas Carol. I do not like this man, and both Emma and Jane Fairfax could do so much better. This man is so mean to his fiance, and he leads Emma on so much more. He's literally always flirting with Emma. He's always having a little joke with her, and he's quite literally bullying his fiance. He talks bad about the way that she looks, and he keeps poking fun about her connection to Mr. Dixon, and he's just genuinely such a jerk. And I'm just sitting here like, why is Jane with this guy? Like, he's so mean. And yes, I understand he's trying to hide his relationship to her, but like, everyone in town talks about how great Jane Fairfax is. So it would be really easy for him to be like, oh yeah, she's a lovely girl. Like, even Mr. Knightley talks about how great Jane Fairfax is. So it would be very easy for him to have a similar relationship. And maybe the reason that Knightley objects to him is because he's just a little bit too improper, a little bit too loose with his flirtations. My issue is that, again, I'm getting a lot of different Pride and Prejudice feelings from some of these films. And I feel like Frank is too much like Mr. Wickham in this. Mr. Wickham you're not meant to like. You're meant to see him as the bad guy. Frank is not really a bad guy. You know, he's just like a little bit like loose with his flirtations and his social etiquette, but he's not a terrible person. And this made me hate him and made me just so upset with the fact that he and Jane Fairfax were together. It's like, she could do so much better. So I have to give this one to the Paltrow version, because at least in that one, he is a redeemable character. Let's talk about a couple of the key relationships. First, let's talk about Emma and Knightley. Now, obviously, as I said, the big part of their relationship is their banter with each other. And I love their banter in this film. I think they're really cute. I think it's really playful and sassy. These two have a lot of chemistry. You can see that he's disappointed in her rather than angry with her, but that he really does care about her and her person. Their confession is also really cute and romantic. He has a really sweet line where he says, "Marry me, my wonderful, darling friend." And I was just like, oh, that's so sweet. My big complaint though, where is the iconic line? Where is the "if I loved you any less, I might be able to talk about it more"? That's such an iconic line. Why don't we have that? Now, we have that in the Beckinsale version, but I actually have a lot of issues with their relationship in the Beckinsale version. Now, these two don't have any chemistry. One of my notes when I was watching this movie was, is this banter or just arguing? Because it doesn't really feel like their banter is from a playful place. It feels like they genuinely don't like each other. And they're supposed to like each other. They're supposed to be friends. And there's just no romance there. It doesn't feel natural. And also, I've got to say, when you are asking someone to marry you, it is not a good time to say, "I held you when you were 3 weeks old." Why would you bring that up now? They do bring up the fact about the age gap in the Paltrow version, but they bring it up fairly early in the movie, and then they don't bring it up again. So it's like, okay, yeah, there's an age gap, we're acknowledging it, but we're not going to draw attention to it. Saying that after proposing to someone and then them asking, "Do you like me better now?" is, oh my gosh, it's insane. It's so bad. So due to the lack of chemistry and the really awful confession, I have to give this to the Paltrow version. Okay, so now let's talk about Emma and Harriet's relationship. So in the Paltrow version, I really liked what they did with Emma and Harriet. I think they are really nice mirrors for each other. They're both really chaotic and dramatic, and I love that. And also, Emma is way more involved in Harriet's entrance to society. She really seems genuinely interested in her friend's happiness and having her involved in things. And she's just genuinely really fun and kind to her, and we get to see a lot of Harriet's growth, and we get to see Emma having real conversations with her about her relationship with Mr. Martin and about her feelings for Mr. Elton. We've got that scene where they're burning the things that belong to him, which I think is really fun and silly. In the Beckinsale version, again, I talked about how Harriet is not really a big character. That's going to carry over into this discussion of her relationship with Emma. I really like the introduction of Harriet, where Emma is sitting in the church and then the light is suddenly shining on her. It does tie really into the fantastical element of Emma's imagination really well, but we don't really get to see the two of these women alone much together. We don't really get to see them really interact much, and when we do, it's usually Emma giving her instructions, and there's not a lot of playfulness in this relationship. There's so little of their friendship in this movie that it makes it hard for me to actually analyze the friendship. So I gotta give it to the Paltrow version. Let's talk about the themes of this film. So in the Paltrow version, there's not really much I have to say about this. There's not really any significant themes that it's really exploring. There's definitely, when we see Emma changing her ways, I suppose you could say that, but that is not really investigated much. Emma says, "Oh, I'm going to change, I'm going to stop finding people matches," and then immediately says she's going to find more. She says she's going to try and be better, but then she's still you know, still making things about herself. She goes to apologize to the Bates, and then she tells Mr. Knightley that she went to apologize to the Bates, which makes it more so like about herself. In the Beckinsale version, one of the things that really caught me off guard and I really loved was the way they leaned into the themes of class. Emma at its core is a book that is very much about class disparity, and that is something that is in a lot of Jane Austen's novels. There's a lot of shots of servants and tenant farmers, and really showing the contrast between the wealthier people in their carriages and the poorer people working their land. And we see that in Emma's growth as well. Like, she starts off saying, Harriet, I would never talk to you if you were a farmer's wife. I would not even talk to him. To the point where at her engagement party, not only is Harriet and Mr. Martin at her engagement party, but all of the servants and the farmers are at her engagement party. And I love that we see that growth throughout the film. However, the themes of class and sympathy for the poor is slightly undercut by the fact that the people who come and try and steal from them are children who aren't really stealing from them. They are just asking for money. And then Frank Churchill tries to hit one of them. That slightly undercuts the message, especially given that in the Pelcher version they are adults who actually are trying to rob them rather than children who are just swarming them asking for money. So it is slightly off, but because they actually have a theme that they're trying to investigate, I gotta give this one to the Beckinsale. Final one, and this is rewatchability or just general vibes of the entire movie. So with Paltrow, this film is so quintessential summer film. It is so brightly colored and fun, and everything's just really beautiful. It's honestly genuinely really funny at times, and I do think that Emma is one of her funnier novels, so I do love that it made me laugh at certain points. And there were also just some scenes that were surprisingly thoughtful, and I was really surprised that I was like, this isn't a Gwyneth Paltrow movie. I thought this was gonna suck, but there was really some thought put into this. For example, the scene where Emma and Knightley are talking about Harriet turning down Mr. Martin's proposal. They're shooting arrows, they're doing archery, and at first Emma's doing pretty well, but then when they start talking about Harriet turning him down and Emma is making really bad points and is saying things that are incorrect, she starts missing the target. And Mr. Knightley, who is making good points, is hitting basically the middle every single time. And I just thought that was a really fun mirroring of the conversation. And I was really impressed by the way they did that. And it opened up for some really fun banter between them as well. The Beckinsale version was not fun to look at. Everything was very brown. The land was very brown. The clothing was very brown. The buildings were all very brown. The color grading was very muted. It's just not super fun to look at. It's also way more serious because it goes into these themes of class, and because everybody in this movie is so angry all the time, everyone's reactions just let me jump straight to anger. Let me yell at you for a second. So it's not always super fun to watch because the characters aren't always the most likable people. The actors are very much taking this all very seriously. The way they're acting is very stiff upper lip. There's not a lot of emotion. And I understand that, they're supposed to be upper class, so they're not going to show a lot of emotion. But this is a movie. Let me see how these characters are feeling, please. I can see myself putting this movie on, if I just want something on in the background, on a quiet evening, when I was maybe crocheting or something, and just have something on that I don't have to pay a lot of attention to. But if I was going to put on a movie that I really wanted to watch again and pay attention to, it's going to go to the Paltrow version. We've come to our end, so let's talk about it. Breaking down the points, the Gwyneth Paltrow version of Emma has 6 points, and the Kate Beckinsale version has 4. It was way closer than I thought. I did not realize the Gwyneth Paltrow version was going to come out on top. I know this is a crazy conclusion, and I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset about it because they do not like Gwyneth Paltrow's version. I've seen the internet. People don't like that movie. I think it's fun, though. I really enjoy it. Here's the thing. When it comes to film adaptations, I do not care if they are 100% accurate to the book. That doesn't always mean it's going to be good. What I care about is some accuracy, of course. I want the story to be the same. I want the characters to be pretty much the same unless there's some, massive character flaws in the book that I think could be improved upon by investigating certain aspects of their character more. And I want the general vibes and themes of the story to be the same in the book and the film. But other than that, I think it's really important that you understand that there is some freedom in the way that we tell these stories. Because at the end of the day, books and films are two different mediums. What works for one is not going to work for the other, and sometimes these changes are necessary. And I think this is a really great example of this. Even though the Kate Beckinsale one is by far more accurate, and a lot of the lines actually come directly from the book, at the end of the day, I just had more fun watching the Paltrow version, and sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you want a film that's just more fun. That's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments, do you agree or do you disagree? Maybe your favorite is the Kate Beckinsale version. Let me know if that's the case, and actually let me know which Emma movie or miniseries or whatever adaptation is your favorite adaptation of Emma, and maybe I will revisit these movies and I will eventually compare the winning one of this video to the other Emmas as well. I will see all of you guys very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye!